Hi everyone, welcome to the second part of the lecture about asymmetric information. This time we are going to go over the case of moral hazard, which although comes from the same kind of violation of perfect information as adverse selection, is going to have a different flavor. But hopefully the intuition will be relatively similar and we will be able to understand what's going on. First, the usual disclaimer. I do not allow this content to be published without my consent. If I see this content uploaded online, I will take it down and report whoever uploaded it. So, the outline for today. First, I will talk about what the definition of moral hazard is. Then I will talk about a case of moral hazard in the insurance market. This is not the only example, but the same way I talked about the limits market for adverse selection, I will talk about the insurance market for moral hazard. Then I will go over a more general model, which we actually call a principal agent model, and I will go over the details around the general model. The flavor again will be the same as in the insurance market in particular. And finally, I will summarize the results around moral hazard, how this problem can be solved, and I will compare adverse selection and moral hazard. So what is moral hazard? In economics, it refers to the outcome of a situation where one or several agents make hidden actions that are unobservable to other agents. Note that I emphasized the expression hidden actions, and if you remember the lecture about adverse selection, the previous lecture, I emphasized the term hidden knowledge. And this is going to be the fundamental difference between adverse selection and moral hazard. There is an asymmetry of information, but the nature of the asymmetry is going to be different. Think about an example. A worker's effort is an action. It is not directly observable. Most of the time, your manager is not constantly monitoring the amount of effort you put in your work. The results could be observable. We could see how much the worker managed to produce or how much he could get done at the end of the day. But we do not know if he got this result by working 1 hour and doing nothing for the remaining 7 hours, or if he steadily worked over the whole day. And the thing is, the worker could also shirk. Shirk means be lazy, dawdle around, goof off, and still achieve a good result. Maybe the worker only needs 10 minutes to get the job done, and the rest of the time doesn't have to provide any effort. A driver can decide to be careful or not. That matters a lot for the insurance company. The insurance company wants to make sure that whoever they are going to insure is going to be careful when they drive, because they do not want to see a high probability of an accident. This is where the insurance company has to pay money. An insurance company is doing well when it doesn't have to repay its customers. If too many customers at the same time had to ask the insurance company to repay them, the insurance company might not have the funds and it will go bankrupt. Think about something like a storm in Texas or in the US. Well, Texas is in the US. If everybody had their home insured against storms, then the insurance company would be doing well for like years because there would be no storm, and suddenly there is one big hurricane that wipes out half of the state or something like this, and then suddenly the insurance company would be short of funds to repay everybody for the losses. Think about now an unemployed person's effort. An unemployed person can show effort to find a new job, but this is not directly observable to the unemployment benefits provider. the unemployment benefits provider asks a proof that the unemployed person is looking for a job, but in general, this proof is not it's not a proof of a lot of effort. They just want to see whether you sent some resumes to some companies and whether you got some job interviews. So you can do a very minimum amount of work by sending just a bunch of resumes, but that would take, an hour on LinkedIn, as opposed to try to update your resume, try to customize your resume to each job offer, and so on and so forth. So I think by now you understand what's going on. The difference between adverse selection and moral hazard is that adverse selection is just about knowing something that the other one doesn't. Moral hazard is about doing something or not doing something without the other side of the contract not knowing about it. So, with adverse selection, the source of asymmetry is exogenous. Agents are of a certain type ex ante. Ex ante means beforehand, and they cannot change it. Typically, a driver is just a good driver or a bad driver. This is in their nature. We are not talking about how much effort they're going to put in driving carefully or not. We are just saying that that customer is naturally a risky driver or naturally a safe driver. Moral hazard. In moral hazard, the source of asymmetry is endogenous. Agents choose to do or not do an action that is unobservable. A driver, whether he's good or bad ex ante, then will choose whether he is going to be careful or not careful. With adverse selection, it's in their nature. They cannot change the fact that they are risky drivers or safe drivers. In moral hazard, they can choose to be risky or not. You can also already assume that in real life, most problems contain a bit of both. Somebody could naturally be a good driver or a bad driver, and on top of that, they might decide to drive carefully or in a risky way. Here, we are going to only talk about moral hazard. We are not going to add adverse selection on top. That would make the problem way more complicated, but the intuition of the model would still be the same. So, we might as well just go for a simpler model. Talking about a model, let's look at moral hazard in the insurance market. So, the expression moral hazard comes from the increased risk or hazard of bad or immoral behavior due to being insured against the negative consequences of such a behavior. Note that here I talk about behavior and insured, so I do not necessarily talk about precisely getting car insurance or health insurance. I talk about the general idea of behaving in a certain way and not being penalized for behaving that way. And I will be more precise in the next slides. So, for instance, fire insurance results in more arson. Arson is like pyromania. It's pretty much the same thing. So, if a house is insured against fire, apparently, it's something we find empirically, there are more houses that burn down. Now, you might think of at least two possible stories. One narrative says, knowing that you're insured, you're going to be less careful about things inside your house. So, you might be less careful about leaving your oven on, for instance. If you leave your oven on, then chances are your house is going to burn down, maybe even explode. The second narrative could be knowing that people are insured, they might want to set their house on fire on purpose to get the money from the insurance, making them believe it's an accident, to get all of the money from the house and then pretty much start a new life. That could be two different reasons. One of them is just being less careful knowing that you have insurance. The other one is deliberately doing bad things because you know you're going to be insured, and maybe you can strategically get out of it. Insurance against theft and accidents decreases precaution. So if your car is insured against accidents and thefts, we see in general that people are less careful about their car. One, they might decide to go maybe faster, or they might decide to maybe cut other drivers in lanes, or they might maybe leave their car open or unlocked in the parking lot, and that increases the risk of thefts and cars broken into. Unemployment insurance decreases job search. If an unemployed worker knows that he's going to receive some money from the government for X amount of time, let's say 6 months, maybe 1 year, we see that unemployed people tend to decrease their efforts in searching for a new job. Now, you might think, well, why do we provide unemployment insurance then? Why do we give these people money if we know that they will not try to find a job hard? Well, the idea is that if you give them insurance that in the couple months they can still pay their rent, or they can still survive and pay their bills, then they can take their time to look for the perfect fit of a job. They might look for the job they want, the job of their dreams, or a job that matches their salary expectations, or maybe their skills, or maybe their preferences. Whereas imagine that I lose my job today and I have absolutely no savings because I was paid on minimum wage before. So I was barely hanging in there. Well, since it's already July 22nd, I'd better find a job fast, otherwise I won't be able to pay rent next month. And so I will go to McDonald's, Starbucks, Tim Hortons, whatever place I can find that is going to pay me for the next month. And maybe once I start working, I will be looking for another job while on the job. But in the short run, I might be short of funds, so I'll be like, okay, I need to find a job as quick as possible, so I'm gonna go to any random place that hires fast, where it doesn't take 3 job interviews and a test to get a job. Although the job will pay less, at least it will allow me to pay my rent. If you have a degree and you expect to earn more money, then when you get unemployment insurance, you can take your time to polish your resumes, your job interview skills, and so on and so forth. You can take maybe 1 month, 2 months to find the perfect fit. You will, of course, probably get more money than minimum wage, and this will happen thanks to unemployment insurance. So, the fundamental feature of moral hazard is that actions are not observable. Otherwise, the insurance coverage could be contingent. Contingent means to depend, pretty much, could depend on action, and moral hazard could be avoided. If, for instance, once you get insurance for your house against fire, you have to put cameras, or there is something that monitors your actions, then the insurance company can say, well, I saw what you do at home. You're very careless with your oven. You are lighting up candles everywhere right next to your bookshelf. That's not good behavior. We are going to charge you a higher premium because you're putting your house at risk. Or you could think about putting some sort of a device in a car for somebody who is insured against theft and accidents for his car. You could put something like maybe the camera. The camera can be used if you have accidents to prove that you're not that you're in the right, or it could be maybe a way for the insurance company to check whether you are careless when you drive. So An example between adverse selection and moral hazard. Typically, the car. You could be a good driver or a bad driver. This is adverse selection. It is in your, let's say, in your genes. Okay? It is exogenous, as in you cannot change it. The problem with that, we saw, is that since the insurance company doesn't know about it, the insurance company will charge an expected premium between the expectation between a good driver and a bad driver. But this premium might be too expensive to a good driver, so only bad drivers will accept that premium. And knowing that, the insurance company will decide to charge the risky driver premium because they know only risky drivers will accept. The result is only the bad type is going to be selected, is going to take part in the transaction, and that is why we call it adverse selection. With moral hazard, it's not about being a good or bad driver ex ante. It's about deciding to be safe or risky when you drive, careful or careless. The company doesn't have any way to know whether you're going to be safe when you drive or not. And this will impact, and this is what we are going to see in the future slides. This will impact the decision of the insurance company. I hope it's clear now. Okay. So, an indirect way of punishing bad behavior, as in, I don't know if you behave good or bad, but I have an indirect way to punish you if you behave bad. And this indirect way is to decrease coverage, is to propose less than full insurance. Think about the intuition. If you are fully insured, it means that no matter what happens to your car, you will get the full value of your car back. Same with your house. So if your house burns down, okay, you're going to lose a lot of things, but then there will be an assessment of the value of the house and what was inside, and you will get paid in full for that loss. Not so bad. Of course, it's a house, it sucks. You might have lose a lot of things that you have a personal value for, but in terms of monetary value, you're going to get, if you own a house in Vancouver and it burns down, the insurance company is going to pay you $1,500,000 minimum. That's just the value of the house. But if you take into account the TV, the couch, and every other device that you have in the house, that could maybe go up to almost $2 million. So, if the insurance companies decrease coverage, then you might not get your full money back in case of a loss. So this might give you an incentive to not behave badly. And this is what we are going to see in the model. So it is a way to provide better incentives, but the outcome again will be inefficient as in the adverse selection case. So imagine we have two parties. We have a car driver that we are going to call D, and we have an insurer that we are going to call I. They are both risk neutral. Again, risk neutrality means that their utility function is linear, so it's just going to make computations simpler. But we could easily make an example with risk aversion or risk loving behaviors that would not change the outcome of the model. Now imagine that D starts with an income equal to Y. That's the money he has in the bank, pretty much. Now, car accidents can cause a loss equal to big L, and they occur with two possible probabilities. It occurs with a probability PL if the driver is careful, and 1 minus PL if the driver is careful, there will be no accident. If the driver decides to be careless, there's a probability PH of getting into an accident. Note that I write PL and PH. L stands for low. When you're careful, there is a lower probability of you getting into a car accident, and H for high. So, if you remember adverse selection, it was all about there is a certain probability of being of this type and a certain probability of being of that type. Here, the probabilities are associated to the possible actions that the driver here is going to take. Here, the driver can decide whether to be careful or careless. Imagine that the insurance company offers actuarially fair rates. So the price per dollar coverage is pi, and it will be equal to the corresponding probability of getting into a car accident. That's what we saw in the risk lecture. Now, being careful costs a certain disutility to the driver, because you have to be very careful. You have to constantly focus on the road. You cannot listen to music. You cannot talk to people. You have to be very, very focused. You might have to go slower even. So that costs a disutility equal to C. Whereas being careless doesn't cost anything. It's all good. Now, let's look at the case where the driver is not insured, and we'll compare with the case where the driver is insured. Now, imagine that the driver is being careful. So, if he's being careful, we said that the probability of getting into a car accident was PL. So let's compute the expected utility. With probability PL, our careful driver gets into an accident, so his income will be Y minus the loss. Now, with probability 1 minus PL, there is no loss, there is no accident, so the driver's income is simply Y. If the driver is being careful, he's going to suffer a disutility equal to C. Now, if you simplify all these terms, you get Y minus PLL minus C. If he's careless, with probability PH, he's going to have an income equal to Y minus L, and since his utility is linear, that's his utility. And with probability 1 minus PH, his utility will be equal to Y. Since he's being careless, there is no minus C here. So, simplifying the terms, you get Y minus PHL. Now note that between those two terms, Y is there. But the difference here will be that there is a difference in the probabilities of getting into an accident, and being careful implies a cost that being careless does not imply. So, the driver wants to be careful if his expected utility by being careful is bigger than his expected utility by being careless. If you rearrange the terms, it's all about whether the disutility of being careful is lower than the loss times the difference between PH and PL. So it is all about the value of the different parameters. In an exercise, I could give you all those different values, and you would figure out whether the driver prefers to be careful or careless if he doesn't get any insurance. Now, just for the sake of the example, I'm going to assume that this condition is satisfied, which means that the agent, if he is not insured, wants to be careful. And so being careful is the efficient outcome. You can already imagine that once I introduce insurance to this problem, there is going to be a moral hazard problem, which means that careful driving will not be what the driver wants to do anymore. So, Imagine now that the insurance company offers full insurance. So, if the loss is equal to L, the company says, I'm going to pay the driver back an amount equal to L. And so the total premium, the total amount that the driver will have to pay at the beginning of the year will be, well, pi times Q. Pi is the amount of coverage per dollar, and Q is the total amount that is going to be covered. Q is equal to L because of full insurance. And if the driver is careful, small pi will be equal to PL. That's what actuarially fair rates means. So, if the insurance company thinks the driver is going to be careful, then it's going to charge that much at the beginning of the year. On the other hand, if the insurer thinks the driver will be careless, then it's going to charge PH times L. Note that PLL and PHL are the expected losses. With probability PL, there is a loss of L, and with a probability 1 minus PL, there is a loss of 0 because nothing happens. So this is actually equal to the expected loss. Just a side note. Now, the driver is thinking, well, it doesn't matter so much because after signing the contract, the driver's income will be y minus pi regardless of whether he gets into an accident or not. To see this, you can compute the expected income and the expected utility in each case under insurance, and you will find that either nothing happens and the income of the driver is going to be Y, total income, minus what is paid to the insurance, or it's going to be Y minus pi minus the loss plus Q, which is the amount the insurance company repays, which is also equal to the loss. And so you would get that both losses cancel out and the driver would end up with the same income no matter what. This is what full insurance means. If you drive a car worth $10,000 and you crash it and it's worth nothing, the insurance company gives you $10,000 back, and whether you own a car worth $10,000 or you have $10,000 in your bank account, doesn't matter. It is the same value. Now, if the income is the same for the driver, no matter what happens, then the driver has to decide whether he's going to be careful or careless. Now, in both cases, his income will be the same. So, what does he want to do? Well, if he takes care, if he's being careful, his income will be equal to, or his utility will be equal to y minus pi minus c, the cost of being careful, versus y minus pi if he is careless. So obviously, he doesn't want to be careful. Careful is too annoying. He's going to end up with the same amount of money no matter what. So he doesn't want to be careful. If the insurer anticipates that, he's not going to be careful. He doesn't care. So, if the insurer anticipates that, he's going to charge the careless price. The careless price is PH times L. And this is moral hazard. If the agent is fully insured against the risk he's exposed to, he doesn't have any incentive to provide efforts. So he's going to engage in the bad behavior. Any questions before I get into the general model? C is the cost, is the disutility of driving. Where do I? Here. This is the fact that being careful is annoying. You have to be focused on the road. Maybe you cannot listen to music. You cannot talk to people. You have to drive slow. So it is the disutility coming from having to be careful. And in general, behaving well implies some disutility. You could make the same example with a smoker. You could say, well, the insurance company doesn't know if the agent is a smoker because the agent is hiding it. Then once the agent is insured, he might decide to just smoke because no matter what happens, his medical bills will be paid by the insurance company. Not smoking would be a cost for him. It would be a disutility. It would be annoying. That's the idea. Okay, now let's go over the general model. In general, the moral hazard problem arises in agency relationships where parties sign an agreement or a contract, but two things are going to happen. The first one is interests diverge, and we see that more than once. I will give you many examples where interests diverge. And the second characteristic is that some actions are not observable by one side of the contract. The information asymmetry. Because of that, there is an opportunistic behavior after the contract is signed. Once the contract is signed, you know that whoever is on the other side of the contract, your employer, your insurance company, and so on, does not know what you're doing. So you're going to have an incentive to behave, well, bad, or to do whatever you want. But what you want will, in general, be different from what the other side of the contract wants from you. So, to prevent this kind of behaviors, there is a need for incentives, and most of the time they are going to be monetary incentives based on something that is observable. Your insurance company cannot charge you your premium based on what you do because the insurance company doesn't see what you do. They can only charge you based on something they can see. Couple of examples. Performance-based pay in employment. Remember that when you get hired by your employer wants you to work as hard as possible. However, you want to get paid, but you do not want to work as hard as possible. Working in general implies some disutility. I barely know anybody, maybe one or two people, who like what they do from the time they start to the time they finish their job. For instance, I love my job, I love teaching, but there are some parts of teaching which are not fun. The teaching part is fun, but there is everything else around. The preparation, the grading is not fun. We have to grade, but the grading is not fun. So, there is some disutility coming with effort. So, how can your employer make sure that you are going to work hard? Your employer in general doesn't see if you are working hard. You could be on YouTube on your computer all day and just working whenever he passes by your office. Well, a performance-based pay could be a good way. They don't see how much effort you are providing, but they see maybe how much output you are producing. A typical example is people who work in clothing stores. Their employer might not be at the store every day. They might be taking care of other stores or, working at the back in the office or something. So they don't see if employees are providing a lot of effort. But by providing a commission, by saying, well, your pay is going to be part is going to be partly fixed, or not always, and a part is going to be variable. It depends on how much you sell. Then employees will have an incentive to come to you and say, hi, are you looking for something in particular? I can help you. I can find you this size, and so on. And I don't know if you noticed, but in many clothing stores, once the employee took care of you and you're about to purchase something, they say, oh, can you tell at the cashier, can you tell the cashier that my name is whatever? And you have to go to the cashier and say, oh, the person who helped me is this person. And then on the receipt, there will be the name of the employee who helped you. The idea is that it's going to be recorded by the company. And then at the end of the month, they will see that Bob managed to make that many sales, and he gets some percentage of the sales as part of his income. I know somebody, for instance, who works at Sleep Country on Hastings and Granville in Vancouver. So you might have met him already if you've bought some bedroom furniture there. He told me he is paid 100% commission. So he can decide to go to work. Well, he has to go to work. There must be someone at the store, so he has hours. But he could decide to stay behind the computer doing nothing and let customers figure their stuff on their own. He would not make that much money. On the other hand, he could just talk to customers and say, okay, hi, what are you looking for? A pillow, a mattress, what size, what thickness, what kind of fabric, and then give you some advice. He would make a sale. And this is how he makes his income. Note that a commission is a risk. The risk is, if you don't make any sale, you do not get paid. And this is what is going to motivate the employee to work hard. In insurance, there is this thing called a deductible. A deductible is an amount of money that the insurance company will ask you to pay if you get into a car accident. So, you pay your premium at the beginning of the year, and the insurance company says, if you get into an accident, we give you that much money back, but you're going to pay a penalty because you got into a car accident. It means that even if you get full insurance, because you paid this deductible, at the end of the day, you will not end up with the same amount of money whether you got into an accident or not. You will end up with slightly less money if you get into a car accident. So, you will have an incentive to drive carefully. So, a deductible is a way to punish you if you do not behave well. A performance-based pay is also a way to, instead of penalizing you, punishing you, it will be a way to reward you for your efforts. So, if you want to solve the moral hazard problem, include in the contract a way to punish bad behavior or reward good behavior. It's as simple as that. Stock option plans in corporate governance. If you reach a relatively high position in a firm, CEO, CFO, high-level managers, you or your contract might include some stock options. Stock option plans are, there are different plans, but in general, they include some kind of a discounted price on the stocks of the firm you work for. So let's say Apple hires me and I am like executive manager of, a branch or something. I might get a stock option plan in the sense that I can buy Apple stocks at maybe 80% of their market price. The idea is that if I own stocks from the company I work for, I want those stock prices to increase. And the best way to increase stock prices is to perform well, is to do sales, is to make new products, is to increase profits. So if you have interests in your firm, as you have some shares you own stocks from your firm, then you have an incentive to work hard to make high profits so that your stocks will increase in value. Bonus pay for professional athletes and lawyers. When lawyers win a case, they get a bonus pay every now and then. This is an extra amount of money they get on top of the regular pay to reward them for the efforts they provided, and thanks to these efforts, they manage to win a case. Professional athletes get bonuses all the time. Many athletes have a fixed contract that they negotiate with their club or their, it's club for soccer, but I guess it would be team in North America. And they might perceive some bonus pays if they maybe perform particularly well. It could be based on the number of goals scored. Think about hockey, soccer, American football, and so on. It could be based on other parts as well, about just how well you perform in the team overall. That could be your general stats. For instance, how long do you keep the ball for? How often are you playing on the field? How many assists do you get, for example, for basketball? So you might not be the one who scores, but you might be the one who gives the ball to the one who scores every time. You might be like LeBron James' assist, the main guy who's giving the ball to LeBron James. It's thanks to you that maybe LeBron James manages to score that much. In fighting, there are bonus pays to give you an incentive to provide extra effort to win your fight, and sometimes to win your fight in a spectacular fashion. I don't know if many of you watch, for instance, mixed martial arts. The UFC, for instance, is the number one promotion for mixed martial arts. After every event, one event is composed of 6 fights. After every event, the president of the UFC gives bonuses to different fighters according to their performance. So there is a knockout of the night bonus, which is like $50,000, I think, right now, or $75,000. There is a fight of the night where both fighters get the bonus. There is a what else is there? Yeah, there are a couple of bonuses. I forgot the categories, but that's the idea. And the idea is to get some money on top of your pay. Okay, so now let's talk about the general model. So as I said before, we often encounter moral hazard problems in agency relationships. We also call this principal-agent models. Why? Because first we have a principal, P. The principal is going to be the one that writes the contract, that proposes the contract, like your employer or your insurance company. This is also the one who cannot observe what the agent is going to do. So, if I am insuring my car against accidents, I am the agent, the insurance company is the principal. If I am being hired for a job, I am the agent, the employer, my firm, is going to be the principal, and so on and so forth. So, imagine we have a principal, P. For instance, you could think it's a shareholder for a firm. He hires an agent A, which is going to be the manager. Both are risk neutral. Again, makes the math easier. And the principal hires the manager to work on a project on her behalf. So the shareholder is the one owning the firm, and he hires a manager or CEO and say, okay, we need you to work on this. Now, the project has a risky return. It can be either a success, S, or a failure, F. Now the agent, the manager, A, can exert or can provide an observable effort, and this effort is going to be either 0 or 1. 0 as in no effort, 1 as in full effort. Now, the full effort is going to imply a cost. So there is a general cost associated to the amount of effort. The cost associated to effort, so C of 1, when effort is equal to 1, I'm going to label it C1, and this cost is higher than the cost of providing no effort. C0 is not necessarily equal to 0, it is just the cost of no effort. At least you show up to the office. Now, we need to link effort with success and failure. So we need to link the amount of effort provided with the output, with the outcome of A's actions. If A works hard, so if E is equal to 1, E for effort, the project is going to be successful with a probability equal to 1/2. If he is lazy, in this case effort is equal to 0, the project will fail no matter what. So, even if the agent works hard, it is possible that the project is just a failure. There is a 50% chance, in fact, that it's a failure. But if the agent doesn't work hard at all, in this case, in this model, the project will always fail. No fluke, pretty much. Now, the principal, the shareholder, obviously wants to see a success. If the project is a success, that's good money, good profits. And so ideally, the principal wants the agent to work hard. If the agent doesn't work hard, the project fails anyway. So the principal wants him to work hard so that there is a chance for the project to be a success. Let's go over, again, different information structures. Let's go over the case where information is perfect. So here, the principal can monitor, can see exactly how much effort the agent is providing. So what the principal can do is propose a contract that is based not on the output, whether it's a success or a failure, rather based on the input, the amount of effort provided. So he could say, well, I'm going to pay you something bigger than C1 if you work hard. So at least there is a gain if you work hard. But if I see you shirk, so if I see you not work hard, I will provide nothing. I will not pay you. Well, in this case, it's pretty obvious what the agent will decide to do. The agent can either work hard and get a positive utility, or not work hard, not get paid, and get a negative utility coming from C0, because there's still a cost of doing nothing. So here, obviously, the agent wants to work hard. And this is what is efficient. Everybody has an incentive. The agent has an incentive to work hard. The principal has an incentive to make the agent work hard. So this is a case where the interests align. The principal wants the agent to work hard. The agent wants to work hard. Everybody's happy. The agent works hard, does what he can, and his pay doesn't depend on whether the project is a failure or success. It depends on how hard he worked on it. Now, let's go to the case where information is imperfect and asymmetric. I will not show the case where information is imperfect and symmetric. That is not particularly relevant here. So, now, the agent knows how much effort he's putting into his work. but the principal doesn't. The agent is paid a wage W, possibly contingent on effort or project outcome. But if effort is unobservable, the wage cannot depend on the effort, because the principal just doesn't know how hard the agent works. So instead of making the wage depend on effort, he could propose a fixed wage. But if the wage is fixed, well, the agent can either work hard and get W minus C1, or he can work not hard at all and get a utility of W minus C0. The wage will be the same because it's fixed. But since C0 is smaller than C1, then W minus C0 will be bigger than W minus C1. So, the agent will not work hard. And when you think about it, a fixed wage is like full insurance. No matter what you do, no matter what happens, you're gonna get the same amount of money. So if you end up with the same amount of money, why would you work hard? Why would you work overtime if it's not paid? If you get paid the same wage, right? And now I think by now you understand the problem of moral hazard. A fixed salary gives no incentives. The agent will not work hard, but be lazy. More generally, if the agent is not exposed to any risk, we will see moral hazard. If there is no risk of bad things happening for the agent, no risk of being punished, then why would he provide that much effort if it's the same as when he is lazy? The difference between perfect information and imperfect information is that in the case where information is perfect, then everybody observes everything. The principal knows how much effort the agent is putting into his work. If information is imperfect, only one side of the transaction will know about his efforts. That's the agent. So, perfect information means everybody knows everything. Imperfect means only one person knows one side of the transaction, not the other. So, how can we solve this problem? Well, we cannot pay the agent based on the effort he provides because we do not know how much effort he provides. If we pay him a fixed wage, we definitely know he's not going to work hard. So, we can maybe make his wage depend on whether the project is a success or a failure. So, instead of basing the wage on input, we're going to base the wage on something we observe, which is the output. The principal could say, I'm going to pay you, Mr. Agent, WS if the project is a success, and WF if the project is a fail. If the project is a success, the pay is higher, obviously. Now, the agent has to figure out whether this pay is worth working hard or not. So, he's going to look at his expected utility by working hard versus his expected utility by not working hard. If he works hard, with probability 1/2, his wage is equal to WS. It's a success. With probability 1/2, his wage is equal to WF. It's a failure. Since he's providing effort, he pays the cost C1. That's his expected utility if he provides effort. Now, if he doesn't provide any effort, in this particular model, we saw that the project will automatically be a failure. So he will get paid WF and pay a cost C0. So the agent is going to make this math in his head. He's going to think, well, this is what I need to solve to see whether I want to work hard or not. If you rearrange the math, you get this condition. The difference between the success wage and the failure wage has to be twice as big, at least twice as big, as the difference in the costs of providing effort versus no effort. So again, this will depend on the numbers. So the C1 and C0 are fixed, they are ex ante, they are exogenous. WS and WF are wages that the principal will have to decide on to make sure the agent wants to work hard. Now, don't forget that the principal doesn't want to pay the agent $1 billion either, because at the end of the day, paying your employee is a cost as a firm. So you want to pay your employee as little as possible, while at the same time making him provide effort. So, as mentioned before, a variable pay, such as bonuses, commission, piece rates, profit shares, deductibles, will solve the moral hazard problem. The variable pay means that the agent is going to be exposed to some risk. There is a probability that something bad happens and that his utility is going to be lower. So he wants to provide effort to reduce the probability of a bad outcome. Any questions? Okay. Now, since the pay is going to be variable, the agent is exposed to risk, but that also means that there is some inefficient risk bearing. The principal needs to introduce risk in the pay to make sure the agent is going to work hard. That's what's going on here. In the chat, somebody asks if asymmetric information means that one group has more information than another. Exactly, yes. One side of the transaction has more information than the other side. Yes, precisely. Now, let's talk about the more general problem. I gave you the case of insurance, the case of a principal hiring an agent. In general, the idea is pretty much the same, but it is possible that the principal might not always want the agent to work hard. As I said before, if you want the agent to work hard, sometimes you might have to pay him too much. So, if making them work hard means paying them too much relative to the output, in the case of a success, or the expected profit, then the principal might prefer to pay a low wage for which the agent will shirk. It might simply be cheaper. You know he's not going to work hard, the agent will do the minimum, but it's cheaper overall between profits and the costs of paying the employee than having to pay the agent for him to work hard. That's the thing. If you tell me you pay me $1 billion, I'm going to work 16 hours a day. and literally 16 hours and then sleep and nothing else. Yeah, if you pay me $1 billion, I'm down for that. But $1 billion is going to be way too expensive. Who is willing to pay me $1 billion, right? So, in general, the principal faces a two-stage problem. He has to figure two things out. First of all, he has to figure, does he want the agent to work hard or not? And second, how much should he pay the agent for that to happen? So, first of all, for each level of effort she wants the agent to exert, to provide, what should be the corresponding wage scheme? So, if I want him to work hard, how much do I need to pay him? If I don't want him to work hard, how much do I need to pay him? If I want him to work a bit hard, like medium, how much do I need to pay him? Okay, then I know how much I need to pay him. Then, the principal is going to look at what level of effort that comes with the corresponding wage maximizes expected profits. Because on one hand, if the agent provides full effort, there is a high probability of good profits. Expected profits will be higher. Well, expected revenue will be higher. But on the cost side, you will have to pay the agent more for that to happen. And as I said, it could be too expensive. You might prefer to get maybe less revenue, but pay your employees less, like minimum wage, so that overall your profits will be higher. That's the thing. The principal does not always want the agent to work hard. Now, I mentioned effort versus no effort, but you're going to see this in tutorials as well. Effort comes in multiple levels, or sometimes is a continuous variable. Effort could be equal to 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10 different levels of effort. That effort could be represented by the number of hours you're going to put into a project, for instance. Or it could be continuous. Things get more complicated when it's continuous, but in tutorials there is an exercise where effort is continuous. But you can imagine that if it's continuous and the principal wants to maximize profits, then you're going to have to take first order conditions. If we are in a case of effort versus no effort, well, you just have to compare expected profits in one case and expected profits in the other case. That's pretty much it for this slide. So, to summarize, moral hazard problems emerge if the parties to an agreement have diverging interests. If they have the same interests, then the agent will do exactly what the principal wants him to do. And that's that. And the parties to an agreement can take hidden actions that are going to change the value of the agreement. This is the asymmetric information part. Different solutions to the moral hazard problem, and I'm going to mention a couple more now. So they are indirect monetary incentives, performance-based pay, bonus pay, commission, piece rates, promotions, deductibles, and so on. But the principal could also try to monitor, control the actions of the agent. He could, for instance, install a camera in the office and say, you are being watched all the time, so careful what you are doing in the office. Or he could say that if the agent is using the computer from the office, the whole navigation history on the internet will be checked by the IT guys. It's possible. Monitoring of actions will make sure that the principal can base the pay on effort. Because the principal can then see, oh, yeah, he's doing the job. He's working hard. I'm going to pay him. Or he's not working hard. I'm not going to pay him a lot. Just enough for him to take the job. Or there could be penalties or fines in law enforcement. Typically, if you are a driver and you want to park in downtown Vancouver, parking is expensive. You have the choice of paying versus not paying. What do you decide to do? Well, you're going to compare your expected utility if you pay for parking versus if you don't pay. There is a probability that a police officer is going to come and give you a fine because you didn't pay for parking. There is also a probability that nothing happens and you get away free. So, monitoring of actions, knowing that there could be fines, is going to discipline the agent. And that's how sometimes you hear, oh, if you park here, you should pay. Because I see people get fines all the time here. Like cops come here every other day. If monitoring is frequent, then you do not want to mess around with the police and you want to pay for parking. There is another way to make the agent work hard, is to transfer the ownership of, let's say, a project. So we call this making the agent the residual claimant. This doesn't work in all possible jobs, but think about a job where you are a consultant, for instance. Well, if you're a consultant, you are hired by a firm for a specific project. They tell you, we want you to assess or estimate the impact of this on that. We have this data, work your magic, and come back to us in 3 months. To make sure the consultant works hard, the firm could say, well, this project might work and give us a lot of profits. We're gonna keep a certain part of the profits for ourselves. And everything else, you keep it. You are the residual claimant. The residual, what comes after the firm took its share, is kept by the agent. That works particularly well when you have an actual project. The firm could say, no matter what happens, failure or not, we are taking this money. We are keeping this money. Everything else, take it for yourself. The agent then will have an incentive to work very, very extra hard, because if the project is a success and profits are high, then his pay is going to be high. It's actually typically what happens with cab drivers. Cab drivers often pay a fixed fee to their company for them to drive the car. And any money they make outside of that is their own money. So let's say they have to pay, I'm making up numbers, but they have to pay something like $2,000 a month to the company to be able to use the cab. Gasoline is on them. Then, once they pay those $2,000, any extra dollar they make on a customer goes directly into their pocket. So they are the residual claimants. They can claim the residual of their work. There are less formal types of solutions to the moral hazard problem. One of them is repeated interactions. Sometimes contract can be implicit. It's not written black on white, but rather it's something implicit, as in if we interact for like several times, then the contract is automatically renewed because I know that you're doing good work, for instance. That could be an implicit contract. It is not necessarily explicit that the contract is going to be renewed, but as long as nothing bad happens, it pretty much keeps going. Reputation effects. If you care about your reputation, it could be for the sake of your career or for something else, just for your personal well-being, then you do not want people to think badly of you. And that could be independent of the pay. You could be paid a fixed wage, but if you care about what other people think of you, you will still provide a bit of effort so that people say about you that you do the job. Now, reputation effects can particularly work if you are aiming for promotions. If you want to develop your career, at some point you might want to go from, well, the guy that flips patties at McDonald's to manager, and then, well, manager of the fries section, and then manager of the unit, of the branch, and then you could be manager of all the McDonald's in Burnaby, and then manager of all the McDonald's in British Columbia, and then maybe manager or CEO of the McDonald's Canada. If you care about that, then you will provide effort regardless of how much you're being paid, because you want other people to notice you. You want to be noticed, you want to be rewarded, and a possible reward, which is implicit, is a promotion. An Employee of the Month award. Knowing that there is this system, and that being Employee of the Month might not give you a raise, might not even be a bonus. I don't even know if there are bonuses for those things, but this could be a way for you to build your resume, to showcase that you are putting effort in your work. Could be another way to make sure that the agent is working hard. Again, the outcome may still be inefficient because of inefficient exposure to risk. And this is why we also have a market failure, same as adverse selection. Any questions? Okay, so let me finish with comparing moral hazard and adverse selection. So again, adverse selection is about hidden information or hidden knowledge, and that arises from the costs of distinguishing among individuals with different characteristics. A good driver versus a bad driver, a healthy customer versus an unhealthy customer, a productive employee versus a non-productive employee, a high ability student versus a low ability student. In each of the examples I gave, agents do not choose what type they are. Okay? And this information is hidden to the principal. In moral hazard, it's about hidden action. It arises from the costs of measuring and controlling different behaviors of individuals. Both problems can cause a market failure, and in practice, both problems are relevant. For instance, a driver could be bad or good, that's the adverse selection part, and he could decide whether to be careful or not, that's going to be the moral hazard part. In this course, I will not give you an exercise in the exams or in the quiz which are mixing both moral hazard and adverse selection. If they're mixed, it will be just intuition questions, just what do you think is going to happen, and so on and so forth. I will not ask you to solve mathematical problems with both adverse selection and moral hazard. It's going to be either one or the other. So there could be one exercise of each, but I will not put both in the same exercise. It's too complicated. Now, it complicates the problem, and it also becomes harder to disentangle each effect. The market failure can come from both problems, but we want to make models as simple as possible to be able to understand where the market failure is coming from in each case. Okay, so both adverse selection and moral hazard are sub problems related to asymmetric information. If information is imperfect and asymmetric, then you might run into either adverse selection, market for lemons, signaling, and so on, or moral hazard, somebody who is not doing what he should be doing, not working hard, not trying hard in general. Okay? Any questions? So, I strongly encourage you to go over the tutorial questions even before you watch the tutorial, which has been uploaded. So, by now, all the problem sets have been uploaded online with the associated tutorials, the tutorial videos. Let me know if anything isn't clear. Adverse selection and moral hazard exercises have been the toughest ones for everybody. Okay, students in general struggle more with these ones than the others, than risk, game theory, or monopoly, price discrimination, and externalities. One reason is there are less opportunities to work on them because they come at the end of the semester, as opposed to externalities where I gave already an assignment question about it, and it's also in quizzes and midterms. The second reason is it looks like the problem is more complicated, but if you put things down and you think about it carefully, who has the information, who doesn't, who is going to have an expected utility, and so on, then you can solve these problems perfectly fine. I see a question here. Adverse selection stands for that person can be good or bad driver, and it cannot be distinguished. But moral hazard means that man can decide whether he wants to be good or bad driver. Exactly. This is the difference between something that is exogenous, it is given to you, that's how you are, nothing to change about it, and things which are endogenous, you have to decide. Typically, if you think about a 201 problem, when you go to Tim Hortons, things which are exogenous will be the prices. The price of a muffin and the price of a tea are exogenous. You show up at Tim Hortons and this is what they are. You're not bargaining with Tim Hortons. What is endogenous is how much you are going to decide to buy. The quantities in this case will be endogenous variables. And this is why when we solve models, we solve for the endogenous variables. All the solutions to maximization problems are endogenous variables, and all the variables that we call parameters are exogenous variables. They're given to you. Income is equal to 10, price is equal to 1, that's given to you. Given that your income is 10 and the price is 1, how much are you going to buy? That's for you to choose, and that's what's going to be endogenous. Endogenous means from within, exogenous means from the outside. Exo versus endo. Okay? To give you another example about the difference between those two things, we often talk about endogenous production of hormones versus exogenous production of hormones for anyone. Endogenous production of hormones means that this is the production of hormones coming from within. This is what your body creates, what your body makes. Exogenous is what you would have to take in the form of a pill or any other, like an injection, if you want to regulate your hormones. So someone who's on birth control, for instance, is taking hormones exogenously because, well, birth control is for women, and there might be a birth control pill for men now. I think it just came out. I'm not sure. I'm going to take the example of women. Those pills contain some estrogens and progesterone, which are hormones used to, they are used for many different things, but in particular, they regulate ovulation and they regulate period cycles. But estrogens and progesterone are hormones that women and men naturally produce, endogenously produce. Any other questions? Well, that's it for this lecture on moral hazard. Have a good rest of your week and see you in the next one. Bye.